begin. And I just want to convey that this meeting is a meeting that is an open meeting of the Nuwari Working Group. It's being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. That's due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. So we have suspended meetings, public meetings in person, and are conducting those meetings with remote participation. And so we thank those who have chosen to attend and are certainly welcome to attend. The order allows public bodies to meet remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded and the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. This meeting will not feature public comment. So we are convening by Zoom, and it will be posted on the town's website and is posted ahead of the meeting, identifying how people may join. The meeting is being recorded, so note that accordingly. We are missing Olu this evening, and I think we've not heard from Dennis, right? No. Okay, but otherwise everybody else is here, so welcome and thank you. And I can see we have a few attendees this evening. So the first action item, and as I noted to some people before we started, my printer didn't work actually, so I don't have the agenda, but I do recall the first action item is the approval of minutes. So if I could have a motion related to that.
So moved.
I propose that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Second.
All right. Any comments or discussion? And if none, all in favor? I think we need to do a roll call vote of the minutes too. All right, so I'm going to just kind of read across my screen in the order that you're showing up here. Matt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Toyin?
Yes.
Ramin?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Vivian?
Yes.
Natasha?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
And Dennis? We're voting on minutes, if you heard that. Are you in favor? Not quite here, maybe almost here. All right, the minutes stand approved. And the chair votes yes, I guess. The minutes stand approved. I think with that, the second item is we're going to move directly into Lisa on follow-up on the vision. Is that correct, Kate, as I remember?
Yes, and I just emailed you the agenda, Marion, so you'll have it right in front of your computer.
Okay, actually, before I do that, I do want to speak to one thing. Natasha had asked a question, or she'd asked actually a couple of questions. She asked whether this committee was a committee that was of the select board or a working group that is related to the select board. And in fact, this committee is looking at our charge, tasked with making recommendations to the select board for future action. So that is who the recommendations go from here to the select board. And also a question about the agenda, noting that each agenda has tended to be a little bit different. As Kate sent out what we're looking at for the next couple of agendas here. So we're going to start with some discussion of policing after we finish our discussion of vision for today. Vision will come back in a final form, but we're going to try to get it 90% of the way, 95% of the way there today. And then given the high emphasis that the group had on policing, we've asked Chief Schlittler to join us and just initiate the policing conversation. And we also indicated that we will ask the superintendent to join us on schools, which is another very high priority item. What I will be doing is we'll be working with Kate and Katie, and Matt will join as well. And we're going to figure out sort of how we can lay out a calendar for the group between now and the end of the year that we can all take a look at, but that will give us a sense of the arc of our work so we can see how we can get to recommendations for town meeting and for the select board, incorporating public feedback, okay? So I am hoping to give a sense of that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we can, give meaningful feedback based if we know what the overarching goals are and what our mission is, so that rather than just individually every week, not understand how that fits into the larger picture.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so I'm hoping that by our next meeting that we'll be able to lay out where we're going from here to the end. It is something that Kate and I have been having some conversation about already. And it's an important thing that everybody has a sense of where we're going. Totally agree with you. So Lisa, let me turn it over to you. And we are looking forward to the next layer of magic. Thank you for getting us this far along and now helping us to bring it home. We really hope in a very meaningful way.
Well, we'll get it close to home. I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and then we'll go from there. So I have to admit, I had a bit of a panic this morning once I was reviewing my slide deck and noticed that this is not just an hour. And so I created and shared a very dense document that I hope didn't scare anyone. We're going to talk about what you saw this evening, and you will then refer to it later as we begin to develop the draft. So I just wanted to put that out there for anybody who gets anxious like me when you see certain things without explanation, which is why I said for later reference. So thank you everyone for the content that you have shared with me, for your insights, for your perspectives. It has made my job of culling things together a lot easier. I think that we have made significant progress and we have the meat of what we need, and not to overdo my bone broth analogy, we just need some seasoning and maybe, some nutritional yeast to give it a little more flavor. So that being said, our agenda today looks as follows. Just quick review of the task and agreements, revision of the attributes of a vision statement that is specific to racial diversity or racial equity, a revised language bank based on your feedback from our last meeting, my favorite, the group exercise, and then we're going to take a look at those sample statements that I shared with everyone. And then we're going to take a look at the focus areas as a result of the survey data that we are all familiar with, and then next steps. So we had some conversation last time about exactly what it is that we're doing. And I think I just wanted to hone in on specifically what this particular task is, with the understanding that there are additional charges for the group and there may be opportunities for other work, but this is sort of the finite task that is before us. And it references other things that I think will go beyond our time together. For example, any goals and tactics and objectives and principles for future actions would definitely require more time, energy, and effort. The other point I'd like to make is in a smaller meeting with Matt, Marianne, Kate, and Katie, we talked about a vision statement for the town. So let's walk into this with the understanding that this will be a spinoff, if you will, or will be linked to the town vision statement that is yet to be developed. So I know some of us were thinking, where does this hang out? And there, in my mind, would be a mention of racial equity in the town statement, which then would drive folks to this racial equity statement or vision statement that we're developing now. Any questions about that? Okay. Oh,
Sorry.
and by the way, I can't see you, so you'd have to unmute yourself and speak. So if I say any questions, I can only see 4 of you at a time.
And I'm sort of watching the raise hand function. So if you happen to raise a hand, I do have that up on another screen, but somebody is trying to speak, I hear.
It's me, Jay. Hi, good evening,
Hi,
everyone.
Jay.
So Lisa, you had, not to go off tangent too much, but in addition to racial injustice, what are the other items that the town, when you look overall at a mission statement, that are included along with that topic?
Oh, so I actually did a quick, I I don't know, quick survey poll with the group that I met with. And these are some of the things that came up as sort of pillars of that would require attention in a statement. So education, full service community, growing sense of community, good stewards, family friendly, centrality, small town feel, a hub, location, 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 active attention to various constituencies, charitable, civic engagement, and then racial equity obviously would need to be a part of that. So that's, you know, just quick and dirty, some of the things that came up as potential elements for the town vision statement. And that's really all I have on that. That's a different contract, Jay, so we'll get
No,
back.
that's perfect. That's very useful. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? All right, so we agreed on the following last time. I have added lean in, and I added that not because I didn't think folks were leaning in, but because I observed that folks were leaning in, and I wanted to acknowledge that. In addition, I added trust the process, which I mentioned verbally, but wanted to put it in writing so that when we re-agreed on this list today, that would be there for folks to see. Any additions based on your experience the last time or in anticipation of what your experience tonight will be? Okay, I promise it will be at least as painless as it was the last time. If that makes sense. All right, let's go. So we had a very long list. It was actually 2 slides of the elements of a vision statement last time. And what I did was take a look at what really is relevant for what we're doing, right? So a lot of the elements pertain to more general vision statements, some pertaining to towns, cities, and then some for organizations. So I thought it would be important for us to shorten that list to provide a sort of mental rubric for how we're thinking about and evaluating our draft statements. And so, you know, just to highlight some of the key points that I think we will be looking for: values and aspirations, long-term, shared, achievable, addresses community priorities, positive language, realistic, will serve as a guide, a framework for the work, and informed by communities of color. Those are what I saw as the more relevant and important ideas for evaluation. Any questions or comments on those before we move forward? Anything missing that you know from your experience with vision work that should be there, or anything that you think is irrelevant to the establishment of a vision statement for racial equity in the town of Needham? Okay, so we won't be as structured as creating a rubric and checking off for statements, because we may decide that some things are implicit while there are other things that we determined that we wanted to be explicit. And I wanted to revisit that list as well, because we did not get agreement on this. This is input from you all about things that you thought should be explicitly stated. And there may be some variance in opinion around this. So let's take a look. Acknowledges why and why now. So in my research, I saw statements that talk about, you know, the tragic deaths that have happened, and this is why a particular organization or group is paying attention to something. Others have referenced tragedies in their own town, but many, and there are very few with a racial equity focus, I will say, really just talk about what they'd like to be, as opposed to why and why now. And I know that there was input last time about that being important. So we don't necessarily need to debate that right now, but when we're thinking about what is the content and what's included, we should think about how important that is and whether or not it resonates with us. The various levels of racial injustice and racial discrimination, both at the personal and systemic levels. The importance of impact over intent. And I will also say that maybe these are not things that are explicit in the vision statement, but may be included in the guiding principles. So that is sort of my reaction to the importance of impact over intent. However, this is your statement. You may decide that you want that out front and center, which would be a learning point for many members of the community in terms of understanding impact over intent. A commitment to learning to use a race equity lens at all levels. So can we say that and have it be impactful and be clear to those who are in the position to affect policy and practice? A clear vision and goal that is achievable, right? And that's sort of the essence of a vision statement. So I don't think we have to worry about covering that one. Another idea that was put forth that should be explicitly stated is bringing together marginalized groups within the community. So who are we actually talking about when we're talking about racial equity? And is one of our goals to make Needham a more diverse town? And what does that mean? And is that something that we want to explicitly state in the vision statement? And then lastly, it was thought by someone that we should have an explicit focus on guiding long-term thinking towards the development of priorities and objectives. And I think as this is a recommendation, it could be a part, again, of the guiding principles or suggested goals. Or if you all decide that you want it as a part of the actual vision statement, then we will construct as such. So I want to pause for a minute and ask for some feedback on this list.
Lisa?
Yes.
Naffarelli here. Hi.
Hi.
Just a second bullet point. I think if we want this to be as general a statement and, buy-in from the community, I think when you bring up, racism exists in Needham, it doesn't, to me, define what Needham is. And I actually know, I've dealt with other towns where I think it does in a way. So I'm just saying, when you put that kind of front and center in the vision statement, I think it kind of gives a negative tint to it that really doesn't define us. And I think we can be a little more, I guess, broad or general in the statement, that I think you'd have more buy-in. Then to me, it's divisive to say. I think it exists everywhere, personally. So I think when you say it exists in Needham, it almost seems like it's, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but that it defines us more than I think it does. I think we're welcoming more than, from my seat. But I just, putting that in the statement, I think might be a turn off to some people and not something I'd want to do.
So again, this is feedback from you all individually as to what you want in the statement. And so this is the opportunity to say,
this is Ramin.
Yep.
I think to what extent that statement is true or not, nevertheless, it's a pivotal statement in a sense that it really explains why we need to do a lot of the other things that we have on that list. If racism did not exist or existed at a very low level, then other things that we have listed here and all the effort are basically not necessary to do. So I kind of see your point to what extent that is so, and maybe the way it's stated makes it sound that it's, it's a very strong statement, but that understanding is still pivotal, I think.
and we will be balancing and modulating between a statement that really has teeth and impact and a statement that does not, right? And so you're likely to find that the folks who are in marginalized and underrepresented groups are looking for something with teeth and promise, and other folks may be, as you mentioned, Matt, turned off by the strength of the statement. And so hopefully we'll work through that and come to a place where we are taking into account both ends of the spectrum as well as everything in the middle. Jay, you had your hand up?
Yeah, when I looked at the list and you started going over it, that was a statement that spoke out to me the most, because I feel that when you acknowledge a problem, it then focuses you on how to solve it. And, you know, I don't think all of these items are going to solve every single problem, but I think taking that first step to at least acknowledge that it exists all around you, when some people may think that it doesn't because it may not affect them personally, is something that some people will get and some people won't. I understand the negative connotation around it, but also I feel that it makes a statement to say that we're very serious about tackling this, and everything else that comes after it is going to be driven around addressing that.
Yeah. So it's related to the acknowledgement of why and why now. That's sort of at the top of this list.
Absolutely.
This is Jen Howard. I want to just echo what you all have been saying. I think that it is a strong statement, but I think that the community itself is telling us that they're ready for a strong statement and looking for something that is going to be transformational to us. And I think that particularly in light of the feedback that I at least will say we've been getting on the Needham Human Rights Committee, that I think to not have some kind of acknowledgement, very kind of obvious acknowledgement that we are saying that we realize that racism exists here in Needham, that we're missing the opportunity to move our community forward to a place where we're not only afraid to tackle it, we're going to actually name it. And that's, I think, a really important step for us as a community.
I agree with all three comments. I think one of the things that is discouraging for a lot of the minorities is when things aren't acknowledged. And I think the acknowledgement is really important. And I think also some of these things are going to be uncomfortable when there's growth, there's a little discomfort. And if you're a minority, you feel the discomfort all of the time. And so I think it's an understanding that there might be times of discomfort, but that's because we're growing. And so I think it's okay. And I think if we don't have it, it will kind of invalidate the work that we're doing here.
I agree with these points that are being made. And while I understand what Matt is saying, that it's going to may perhaps be off-putting, it's the raison d'etre for our existence. And if we don't acknowledge it, then we are not validating the concept of what we're trying to accomplish, the goals, and what we're standing for.
So I think it's time for all of us at this point to trust the process and continue to work with Lisa as we're working through this here. I think I hear everybody with what they're saying, and I actually do agree that it's the reason for this group.
It's Sue Neckis. I just want to ask a different question. I actually appreciate that conversation, and I think you all covered it, so I won't really add to it. But my question is really on what are our boundaries, in the sense that when you talk about marginalized groups or a more diverse town, there are multiple dimensions that we could talk about. We could talk about, sexuality. We could talk about religion, other socioeconomic status, all that in addition to race. And I just want to know if we're trying to encompass that, or we're trying to limit it to racial equity.
My understanding is that we're limiting it to racial equity, with the understanding that limit is probably not the right word, given intersectionality and its existence for all of us.
Okay, I just wanted to understand from the, some of the language is broader than others, so I just wanted to understand what that meant.
And Sue, I think, I think the decision-making isn't final on this, but if we're thinking about this in context of maybe going further and thinking about a townwide vision after this, I mean, we've started with this work for a vision for Newari, but perhaps some of those other aspects can be more encompassed in an overall vision for the town at some point, but this group is focused on Needham Unites Against Racism.
And so by example, Sue, we could alter the bullet, bringing together racially marginalized groups. And in the next one, making Needham a more racially diverse town.
Yep, thank you.
Comments on any of the other points?
I'm not seeing any hands
Okay,
waving or in the box.
okay. So actually Sue's comment and question is a great segue to what we're going to do next, and that's to take another look at language. So I heard all of what was said last time, and as you know, I made the list the way I did to bring out some of these other words and terms and concepts. And so the bank has grown, the potential bank, language bank has grown. And so you see the additions there. And not all positive, but I think when I reviewed the video, there were numerous comments about not using white supremacy. So you don't see that there. And so I just wanted to mention that because it was on the original list.
Lisa,
Comments, reactions to this, additions?
Lisa, it's Matt again.
Yes, Matt.
Yes, so maybe I'll lead off again and people will disagree with me, but that is fine. I think there's a terrific discussion we're having.
Absolutely.
Happy to put everything out there. Again, like to me, the first bullet point, privilege, entitlement, positionality. Again, I think it can be divisive, and I'm not saying it's not here or there isn't, but I think that if we're going to have a town-wide statement, once you hear certain words like privilege, there are people, including myself, that are like, well, what is the, it starts to almost get, to me, political. So I just would want to watch some of those words that might trigger a feeling, a negative feeling more than others. I think there are ways to say things without, you know, having these words that are just so kind of ingrained or have definitions. Everyone else kind of has a definition of what it means. So something that's a little, I guess, broader instead of, I don't want to call them trigger words because they're not, but a word that has different meaning to many people. I think if you say privilege to certain people, all of a sudden they're, you know, this statement doesn't apply to me. So just my viewpoint, you know.
I'm going to allow others to respond, Matt, but I just want to raise a point that I don't want to forget about. And the perspective that you're presenting underscores how much education needs to happen once this goes out, right? So in terms of privilege, all of us on this Zoom have privilege. There isn't an individual, you know, on this earth that doesn't have privilege, but the understanding of privilege and the impact of that privilege when you're in predominant group versus a subordinated group is why we arrive at these conversations that we're having. Other reactions and thoughts?
My thought is exactly what you said. I'm sorry, Vivian, I saw your hand go up and I just started talking. I think there's an education component that is pretty critical before anything gets put out about implicit bias and understanding. I'm Puerto Rican, I'm a woman, I've lived all over the world. I still have implicit biases that I didn't even know I had when I got educated in it. So it's making it, I think the education piece is really important.
I think it's critical. And I think that, you know, again, Matt, I hear what you're saying. However, you know, we often talk about language activating how people will think. And I think it's a matter of having a shared vocabulary and a shared understanding and education of what these terms mean, not generally, just generally, but to individuals as they come into this process of thinking about racism and thinking about what it means to our community and thinking about how it impacts our community. If we don't have these words, we will have to have other words. And yet these are the words of the day. These are the words of our time. Privilege, entitlement, positionality, implicit bias, intolerance, they all exist. And it will be critical for all of us who are engaged in this work to be sure that we have reached a common understanding with people who are engaged in conversation with us about what these terms mean. They don't need to activate negative concepts. They just simply need to activate thinking about an understanding of what all of these terms mean.
Toyin?
Yeah, I hear what everyone's saying. I hear what Matt is saying, and I kind of lean towards where he's not with the previous one with racism, but with the privilege I do. And I feel like, it's something that I struggled with a lot of the phrasing that we use, defund the police, privilege. It's just, I feel like people who don't want to hear will use it against us. And so, when you have a term that has many definitions, people will choose whatever definition will make themselves feel comfortable. So out of those ones, like you said, right, everyone here has privilege, everyone has some entitlement. Positionality, that one I feel like it's less heard, and people might be like, what does that exactly mean, and would listen. But when you say white privilege, people shut down very quickly. So I understand both sides of the argument, but I just want to say that I'm confused as well. Like, I want that statement, but at the same time, I want the person who needs to listen to it to listen. So the person who will listen and hears privilege and is uncomfortable and willing to absorb that, that's not the person you're targeting. You really want to target the people who would shut down when they hear defund the police or shut down when they hear privilege. You want those people to start listening to you. So, so I say I would want to remove that word.
So I'll two comments. What I'm hearing from you all pretty clearly is that maybe we should consider some comment about education explicitly stated in the statement, right? So let's think about that. And then the other direction that we could go in is to have a short, concise statement that pulls everybody in, and then reserve our stronger language for the bullets or the legs or that next link. Just something to think about. And in that vein, I think a lot of folks do not utilize these words in their everyday conversations. It's not in their vernacular, whereas for other folks, it's in every sentence. So let's take a few minutes and see how easily or how challenging it might be to incorporate these words into your vernacular, your everyday language, or maybe not your everyday language, but your language by necessity, because I do believe that a shared language is critical in these conversations. And we're not always going to have agreement on the terms, but the ability to speak fluidly about this indicates authenticity, particularly when you are trying to build community. So you can go ahead and moan and groan because it's time to start writing. And what I'd like you to do is write a sentence, just a sentence, using at least 6 of these words.
The vision statement, like a sample vision statement.
Nope, just a statement, just a sentence. And you don't even have the confines of it needing to be a vision statement. Now, we don't have the option of breakout rooms because I typically do this in small groups. And I ask folks to try to use all the words in a sentence, which is an incredibly fun activity, and also gives a sense of mindset. So some folks are really on the positive side, others are really on the negative, some strike a balance. And it's really good to hear the story, but no breakout rooms. So it's a solo assignment. You're going to try to use as many words in a sentence as you can. Go all out with the punctuation, but remember, a run-on sentence is a run-on sentence. So you can utilize commas, semicolons, etc. But I want you to just come up with a meaningful sentence. And here, this is the awkward part for the people watching because we won't be saying anything for a while.
I'll go first whenever the time is right. I'm ready.
I can always count on you, Marcus. Go
I
for
got you. I got you.
it. Okay, in the interest of time, go for it.
All right, kind of a run-on sentence, but try to put 6 of these in. All right. In becoming anti-racist, we must tackle our own implicit bias, intolerance, and discriminatory lenses to bring about restorative justice, healing, and reconciliation to truly bring together the community we live in.
Nice. How many words?
And 8, 7, 8, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to follow that act?
I'll
He
go,
raised the
but I think-
bar. 8 words.
Well, I may have used a lot more than that.
Uh-oh. Okay.
All right, Jay, you got this.
You said run on if you can. All right, so here you go. I seek to understand how my privilege can create a welcoming community that removes implicit biases to create harmony, identity, and racial equity so that everyone feels that they belong and have a position.
Okay. How many words?
Oh, I don't know. It's probably like 6 or 7 or 8, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Who's up next?
I can go. I have Needham as one community which seeks to reduce the impact of racism and implicit bias so that everyone has a real sense of belonging and inclusion through healing and reconciliation. 6.
Okay.
I'll go.
Okay, Matt.
These are all great, by the way. It's unbelievable. People
Yeah.
in 5 minutes. Oh, please. Okay, mine is not as great. Okay. A welcoming and inclusive community fosters diversity with the hope of creating unity and harmony as we all work towards ending discrimination and racism.
How many words did you use?
I think that was 8.
Okay. All right. 8 seems to be the running tally.
Yeah.
Lisa, I'm happy to go. My sentence is very run on, and I have to say that I really liked the ones that started as I statements, so I wish I had thought of that. But here we go. A healthy community recognizes the harm created by implicit bias, intolerance, and racism, and strives to embrace diversity and inclusion by using a racial equity lens to embrace anti-racist behaviors and attitudes in all aspects of institutional and interpersonal living.
Okay. So that sounds like a lot more than 8. Did you count?
I think it's 10 if you count things like racial equity as one.
Ooh, all right. The bar has been raised.
Well, I'm bringing it back down.
I was just going to say that.
Simplicity.
Okay, go for it. Natasha.
For some reason, I wanted it to be positive. I don't know if it was Matt's statement at the beginning of positivity, but I said inclusive and welcoming behavior and attitudes position us in a situation where racial equity can be accomplished in our community. 7.
7. All right.
Down from 10.
All right, I can go next.
Okay.
The recognition of the oneness of humanity and understanding that diversity is as important for a prosperous and harmonious community as unity is, are the first steps in restoring justice and addressing and eliminating racism.
Huh.
I think I'm just at like 5.
No, I think I heard more than
That's
that.
good.
Yeah. All right, who hasn't spoken? Let me scroll.
I can go. This is Jen. Oh, sorry. Dennis, did you want to go?
Oh, okay. Mine is short. I'll go next. So Needham is a diversified community promoting unity and harmony of a racial equity and does not tolerate any behavior or attitude of a racial discrimination.
All
So
right.
probably 7, 8.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right, I can go. Before I go, I thought I was supposed to only use 6, And I didn't think it was supposed to be a statement. So I was just like, I'm making a sentence with these words in them. So I'm the lowest bar. So that's why. So mine was
all right. It takes a village.
Racism, implicit bias, and intolerance prevents unity, harmony, and a sense of belonging among people of color.
Yeah.
Very good sentence.
That's great.
Very good sentence.
Is that everyone?
I believe that harmonious relationships come from being open to learning about one another's self-identity, the community upon which we rely, the lenses through which we see the world, and how we find common ground to address issues of diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity so as to strive for unity.
Okay.
Yes, Vivian.
You all are giving me more rich content. I thought I was all set, but I don't think so. I have to wait for this tape now. Was that everyone?
Nope, I haven't got it, actually. This
Okay.
is Howard. Community is belonging in harmony and unity, embracing diversity and respecting identity by acknowledging privilege, implicit bias, and behaviors that lead to discrimination to promote race equity, healing, and reconciliation.
Okay. How many, Jen?
13.
I was gonna say, so I was like,
Whoa, okay. All right, and the non-prize goes to. We'll just give you a clap.
Yay.
Okay, so how did it feel and how did you arrive at the words that you chose? We've been talking quite a bit about, not quite a bit, but significantly about language and words and positive versus negative versus, turn on, turn off. So how, given that you have full control of the statement that you came up with, how were you thinking about it and how did you determine what words to include?
this is Marcus, and I think when in becoming anti-racist, I know it's something that is not going to be done in a day, in a month. It's a lifetime commitment to that, and to do that and to become that and to continually aspire to be anti-racist, you have to take a look at yourself, and you have to take a look at the things that you may not even consider maybe an implicit bias or discriminatory or things like that, and really address those and hone in on what you can do personally to make yourself better in order to help others in the community that you serve. So that's what I was kind of thinking through that, and recognizing in myself, things that I can work on or be better at, and I'm sure a lot of us can. So I was kind of thinking it from that lens.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other thoughts?
I guess it must be my engineering training, but I like to think of fundamental principles, basic fundamental principles as the starting point. And I was looking at those words and trying to find the foundational ones on which we could build, other things. And that's what was motivating me and I was thinking about.
Okay. And if I didn't know you were an engineer, Ramin, your comments are well beyond the sciences, if you will. So it's interesting that you say that.
Oops.
So I know I was thinking about our being one community and trying to think about what are the harms or the barriers that are preventing us feeling truly like one community, and where did we really want to go? What feeling did we want to end up with? That's what I was thinking about.
Okay. One more comment before we move on.
Lisa, it's Matt again. And similar to Marianne, I think the way I looked at it was saying, what can we all kind of agree upon if you had something out there that, people you look at and say, absolutely. I was just trying to do something, again, maybe more of the positive spin, but that, because the way I look at this at the end of the day is that the vision statement, going to that again, could be hung on by like a business. And, it would just be so widely accepted that people would gather around and say, yeah, this is what Needham wants to be. So when I put it together, it was just saying that, diversity, we want to foster inclusiveness, we want to bring people together, things of that nature that I felt were kind of the positive goal theme that we want to get to as one Needham. So
Okay,
it was a community look.
okay, great. Okay, so while
Lisa, can I ask one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you going to ask for these at the end? Do we want to remind people now, don't throw these away. Don't
Yes.
scribble across them, save these, because you are going to want them at the end, right?
Yes, I am. Thank you,
Okay.
Mary Ann. Thank you, thank you.
Lisa, could I make one more comment about
Sure.
language? I think that I am drawn to language that really makes me stop and think, particularly on this particular topic. And I think that to the extent that we have an opportunity with Nuwari to take a leadership role within the town to try to reframe the conversation about racism, to move away from it being like a good person, bad person dichotomy where somebody sees the word privilege and immediately is on the defensive. But if we could talk about privilege as part of the system that we all exist in, that maybe people can start to connect to that word without feeling badly about themselves, but more just recognizing where they fit into the system that we all do exist in. And so that those were kind of the words that I was drawn to in that exercise. I think that we have an opportunity to invite people to talk about this without just feeling badly about it, but at the same time acknowledging its existence and how it materializes in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lisa, I couldn't agree with that more. That was one of the reasons why I started with the word privilege, because I feel that as part of the previous discussion that everybody felt it was such a negative connotation. But I think that there is, one of the things got me thinking when you said, well, we all have privilege here, right? And that wouldn't have been something to which I would have normally thought of unless you said it and made me really think about it. So I think some of these words can be very introspective to really make us think about what we have and what we can offer, and be able to use it in a different light as opposed to just taking it at face value.
And I think, Lisa, that these are words that are aspirational in a lot of ways, and it's necessary to think about them as concepts within the greater framework, and again, which have very solid definitions for each of us. And yet they're not labels. They're not labels to point blame or to assess judgment. They're concepts to think about, much as you might be thinking about water or air.
Right. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay.
I have just said really quickly,
Yep.
It's a lot of us are putting ourselves in a situation here where it's uncomfortable for us to say some of the things that we really want to say and that we think would benefit our community. So I feel like we've been given a platform to be able to do so. And so we just want to make sure, or I just want to make sure that the things that we say, if it's not meaningful, I don't think it will make change, but we're really putting ourselves, some of us, in a really uncomfortable situation saying the things that we're saying in front of everyone. I just want to, it's not easy to be a minority in Needham, and it's not easy to voice it. And so I just want to make sure that that I want to thank the group for allowing us to be able to speak in this forum, but I don't want to forget that that's how we feel a lot of the time.
Thank you for naming that. Thank you. And I think the way that this statement comes out to the community and all the work around it is going to be really important. How it's couched, how it's presented. The opportunity for learning should be immediately available. But that's to be discussed before it is released, because I think, to Natasha's point, it's not only surfacing vulnerability for folks of color, for folks of color on this group, but it will for the community as well, potentially. And we want to be prepared for that, because what's to say citizen 1 wouldn't then approach citizen 2 and the numbers don't mean anything, and ask, well, what does this mean to you, et cetera. So we want to make sure that folks are prepared to have those conversations as best we can. Okay, so I have taken your previous rich content, not to be undone by today's rich content, and put together a long list of statements. And if we think about what we want to consider in terms of critical attributes to the statement, and if we think about the explicit language that we want to consider, let's look at these with that frame of mind, or with that lens, shall we say. And again, various sources. A lot of this comes from you all. Some of it comes from me, and some of it comes from adaptions of other word groups and statements or sentences. And I know some of you had an opportunity just to quickly look, because I just sent it out at the list. And I'm interested first in any guttural reactions. So did anyone see a statement and be like, hell no, that's not it? And likewise, is there anything that really, or any of them that really resonated with you? And it's my secret as to who wrote what. So don't worry, we won't, you don't have to claim your statement at all.
So this is just a quick question. So this is just kind of what we put out is what we thought, what we want the vision or want it to be like in the future, not like what it is right now, correct? This is what we want it to be.
Right, what you want it to be.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be sure before I said anything.
Mm-hmm. Right, because one of them is in the present tense. I recognize that.
That's what I was wondering.
Yep.
Okay.
Lisa, it's Sunakis. One of my initial reactions is that for some reason, I'm not loving comparing ourselves to other towns, or, I just want us to be the best for us, the best in general, but I don't want to say that we're one of the best towns in Massachusetts. For some, that is just striking me as I want all of Massachusetts to be great at this. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, for some reason that hits me. So I actually like the second half of Needham is one of the best towns in Massachusetts. I really like the concept of being a vibrant community. Mm-hmm. And I also like the last one, which recognizes what everybody brings to the community.
Okay. Any other comments on this one before we jump back up to one?
Lisa, it's Matt again.
Yeah.
I agree with Sue. I think, saying Needham's one of the best towns in Massachusetts, I agree. I'd say it's the best, but I don't think in a statement like this, it is like pitting one against the other, and it seems it takes away from what the actual goal is to the second part of that sentence and the last one as well. So I think there's definitely a mix in there, but even strives to be a beacon in Massachusetts, a little bit overdone. So I think it gets away then from the point. Are you really just talking about how great you are, or are you actually going to talk about where you want to be? And I think we want to talk about where we want to be. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because, there are a number of towns and cities that are doing racial equity work and are beyond a vision statement. So this would not apply to Needham right now in that regard.
Right.
Okay. So we're going to lose the beginning and hold on to the end for potential consideration. Do we have similar feelings about this beacon business as we do about the best town in Massachusetts, even though it says strives?
I would say yes for me, but.
And what do we think about, welcomes diversity is pretty generic, but what do we think about in the harms caused by systemic racism and racial bias?
Lisa, it's Matt again. I think you know what I'm going to say, but I can tell I'm pretty much outvoted. Again, to me, and I'll say it my last time, to know your audience. This is going to go to a large group of people. And although we can talk in this group about educating and understanding what the word means, and hopefully that word means this, it can mean that to us. But I think that in general, when you start saying systemic racism, someone's like, what does that mean? So it's more like you talk about education has to go into it. And I think just throwing terms out can have different effects on different people. Again, and I'm just thinking of the larger community that maybe you can say things a little bit different, but I'm just one person here. It's just my gut feeling when I see it.
I have a different reaction to that, and that is, it's such a general statement. Harms caused by systemic racism and racial bias. Where? Harms caused in Needham, harms caused in our state, in our nation, in the world. It's sort of general, and so it's very generality makes it a bit ineffective.
So, I mean, ineffective, but not more acceptable.
I don't think it's unacceptable. I think people should talk about systemic racism and racial bias. That those are fundamental concepts here. But I think putting it in this statement seeks to end harms caused by systemic racism. Where? Is this a campaign, a universal campaign we're doing it, or is it something we're doing it in our town? If you're going to do it in our town, then we need to talk about, okay, let's list, it becomes a whole big thing. Let's just list systemic racism, which we are doing in other forums anyways. So that's my sense, my feeling towards that.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to say, that statement is the only one that says anything about racism. All the other ones are extremely generic as far as diversity, vibrant community. So there's nothing in here other than that first statement that says specifically what we're trying to achieve.
Lisa, could I, to that point, I guess my question is, we're working on a vision statement as opposed to a mission statement. And so if addressing the harms of racism is the mission, is it necessarily the vision?
Not as it's stated there, Vivian. We would have to wordsmith that to make it a vision. But again, I'm taking what was given to me because there are nuggets, there are great nuggets in this, even though structurally it may not fit the sort of attributes of a vision statement. So I appreciate you asking that question.
Well, it takes us back to the language that we want to use in thinking about the goal of a vision statement and appreciating the distinction between a mission statement and a vision statement.
Right. Right. So, and I think we've probably beat this. Oh, that's a bad, we've gone over this numerous times. So vision being what you want to be versus mission, which is what you're doing or going to do, just in short. So point taken. So do you want to be a bastion of unity and diversity? Or is that in the category with Beacon and Best Town? And part of me feels like that would come across differently if what followed was different. And if it's not resonating with anyone, we can certainly move on. Okay, what about a welcoming place where all citizens and businesses are seen, encouraged, treated with respect and love for what they bring to our shared community? What do you like about that statement?
I think
So what do they bring to the shared community? Sorry, I interrupted someone.
No,
go ahead, Jay.
Well, no,
go ahead, Jay.
Well, I would say I think it's a great start for a vision, which then leads into a mission statement where you can get more specific about what you want to accomplish. It's positive. It may not be super specific, but it's using all the words where people can kind of think about it in a very positive light.
I could see 3 and 4 put together. It's Needham will be, or whatever, a welcoming place where all citizens and guests are welcomed and participate fully in a vibrant civic, cultural, and business community, or something to that effect.
Now, so let me pause there and ask you about this word welcoming. It's sort of like respect, right? If you don't know the culture, you don't know that what is being intended is having the effect that you think, right? So respect across global cultures is demonstrated and received differently. So, and it could be because I've been in this work so long. When I hear welcome, my first thought is, well, what does that mean? How do you know what welcomes me versus, what welcomes the next person?
I think with welcome, there has to be a statement. So it could be a place where all citizens and guests are belong, right? So it's it needs to be welcoming, but you need to belong.
My concern with that is who's doing the welcoming here? Needham will be a welcoming place. A place isn't welcoming. The people in that place are welcoming, I think. And
so how would you say it, Rami?
Well, I don't know. I have to think about that. But I think it almost takes the responsibility of the individual citizens and places it on some amorphous, undefined place.
Community.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Lisa, I think the comment was maybe by Ramin when it says in love for what they bring to our shared community. It's like, well, what are we talking about? So maybe somewhere there, it's like the diversity. So like, I don't know what, there has to be something instead of, I think, what they bring. And I think it has to be more specific. What do we love about it? Well, what do people bring? They, the culture, I don't know what the right word is, but not just what they bring. It's just, I don't understand what that, I love the idea I love the concept of it. There's so much you can bring into this town. So just would like a little more definition.
Okay.
Lisa, can I want to do a time check here.
Yes.
So we're at 7:10.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So we had hoped that we would have kind of wrapped this a little bit earlier with the chief. How many more slides are you thinking that we want to talk through?
Even if I stop after the next 4 slides, if you think about the sheet, we're on 5 and there are 15. That would take us to 7:30 easily. So is this where I ask for time on another agenda or a separate meeting?
Or we probably want to give the chief a decent amount of time. So should we?
Yeah. So
right?
I am feeling, Kate and John, like we would be better off freeing up John at this point. Figuring out how to get this as far as we can go, I think, because I don't think that just 15 or 20 minutes is sufficient for John.
I agree.
So it feels to me like we ought to focus on working on this, and then we're going to have to figure out how we can bring it back to rapid more quickly. Does that sound like it makes sense to other people for tonight?
Absolutely.
I'm looking at consensus. John, I know you're there, behind the screen. I want to thank you for coming. Hi there, Chief. I want to thank you for coming and being available. And we are going to need you back.
Okay, no
I'm
problem
very
at all.
sorry.
It was interesting listening, so you always learn something, so.
Did you do the sentence exercise?
It would have been a run-on after run-on, I'll tell you that.
Well, you're welcome to submit your 6 or 8 or 12 or 13 words too. We'll be happy to take that as input. So
absolutely, we're ready.
But we will look forward to having you back. Thank you very much, John. And the rest of us will focus hard for another, 18 minutes or whatever it is.
All right, take care.
Thanks, take care, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. All right, let's dig in, folks. Number 5, which has no number there, which is just top of the screen. We're talking about embracing individuals, families, groups, businesses with diverse experiences to contribute to a community that is full of vibrant life and socially and fiscally responsible and accountable to one another.
That sounds great, except it doesn't really address the problem.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I was thinking about when I was putting these statements together is doing the town statement is going to be a lot easier because some of this stuff is more appropriate for a broader statement than a statement on racial equity.
Lisa, Matt, the second paragraph, while true, I think when you start talking about religion and sexual orientation, again, it dilutes to me kind of the mission of this group. So I think we're really talking about race and race equity. And I think we talked about earlier that, you know, the sexual orientation, all that stuff can be in a different maybe statement, but I just wouldn't want to lose sight of what our goal is.
Absolutely. Okay. So the next one does the comparison thing again that we've already said we don't want to do, but it does mention race, ethnic groups, backgrounds, talks about friendship and being involved in economic, political, civic, educational, and cultural life. So do we like anything about that? And for all the authors out there, I apologize. I don't mean to I'm just trying to move us along. So when I say, is it anything you like? I don't want folks to say, no, I don't like that statement, and then have you cower in the corner.
I just think this has to be a strong statement, and the wordsmithing has to be pretty precise of what we want. So I think it's hard when we're reading bits and pieces. Like, I don't think I would want necessarily, not that I don't want to form friendships, but I just think it has to be bolder and it has to be more concise.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like the last one. I like that Needham aspires to be a community where people of different races, ethnic groups can, and then the statement. Like, I don't necessarily agree with exactly the way that's phrased, but like, it would be nice that statement said can, and then what we want, like be equals, be treated fairly, whatever our, you know, whatever we decide to. But I mean, I like the idea of that one, probably the best.
Okay.
And just get rid of the model for the nation, you know, but I like the fact that it mentions different races. So there's a race that you're starting to talk about it, and like, what do we want for the races? And then you mention what we want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
That one seemed to speak to me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I get it. I'll take out the model. Eradication of racial injustice. It's a tall order.
Sure.
So in terms of language, we've got racial injustice, underrepresented identities. Sustainable transformation. Comments on the top paragraph?
I like the last one more than I like this one. Whatever.
Okay. So I'm taking your silence that it's not moving you, and thank you for that articulation. Okay. Needham will, yes.
Lisa, so the one thing I do want to say about the first one is that it's not only focused on what individuals do. So it creates some accountability for businesses, for government, for the structures within the town. And somehow that appeals to me.
Okay. Okay, duly noted. So how about Needham as a vibrant town? Okay. Needham as a thriving town?
Thriving's good.
Yeah, I just think describing Needham, I think we should look for the aspirations of what Needham wants to be, but I don't know.
And at least on that, the last one, I just think when you start saying all residents live lives free of racism, prejudice, and discrimination, talk about a tall order. I just think like you're saying like all, it just seems, I hate to say it, unrealistic. They're always going to be, when you say all, they're always going to be people who unfortunately have these types of lies and prejudice. And sometimes you're saying, oh, we don't have it here. You know, oh, they have it in this town and that town, but we have none of that. And I just think it's a little bit not accurate. That's just.
Right, but is it aspirational? So
all, oh yeah, of course, but all, I think it's a.
Yep, unrealistic, I heard you.
Yeah. I hate to say it, I'm just trying to be real.
No, we need your voice, we need your voice. the unafraid. All right. All right. Did we go backwards? We did. Nope, we didn't. Is this new? Are we out of order?
This one is new.
Okay.
Yeah, this is new.
Okay, so we already know not the best town. And I'm thinking the second one, free of structural racism, actively engaged in eliminating prejudice and repairing the harm caused by, is similar to some of the other comments where we had, so free as being all encompassing, and then harm as being not as descriptive. And then a heavy burden to repair historical racial inequities, although healing has to be a part of this journey. Other comments?
This is Jen. I'm not turned off by the idea of kind of the absolute idea that we could be free of it. I realize that that there's a long journey to get there, but if this is a vision statement intended to get people excited about the opportunity before us, that I'm okay with trying to suggest that that's what we're looking to get to.
Okay.
I think the second one speaks very nicely. It's a good statement. Because there is harm caused by historical racial inequalities. If we don't address it or acknowledge it, we're just spinning our wheels.
Okay. All right. And then the next one is not written as a will be, however, it speaks specifically to, well, it's specific. So what are your reactions to that one and the language included?
Lisa, can I go back for a second? It's Sue. So I find myself mentally going back and forth between what is the vision for Newari and what is the vision for the town. And I actually think the middle one on this slide really does speak to what I think our vision as Newari would be. So even though it's not, as positive as we have talked about, or maybe as realistic, there's something about it that I agree with Ramin, just appeals to me in terms of being targeted to what we really want to do.
Okay.
I think a combination of both, the the second and third one in some capacity. It's just about everything from what I'm seeing and what we're striving for and what we would want this town to somehow combine the two. Those are the ones I think that have spoke out to me most since reading and all the other ones. Something like a combination. I can see this being really, transformational and something that would really be captivating. Maybe wordsmith it, but the second and third one is hits on a lot of different things that we should and need to address.
Okay.
The concern I have with the third one is when you talk about historically marginalized, disenfranchised, this hasn't been a topic of sort of headlines in Needham as opposed to other places. So when you say historically marginalized, you have to also explain and give stories of who was marginalized, when they were marginalized, how it was marginalized. I mean, we all kind of generally know that took place. But when you focus on it, then it needs a lot more to make this statement kind of become meaningful than just putting it right out there. That's the problem. That's the concern I have with that it needs a lot more explanation.
Like Lisa, Matt again, wouldn't you, and I hear Ramin what he's saying, and I also think marginalized could also be, again, getting into other groups, religious and other, where to me, we're on a focus on race. So couldn't you just say positive transformation change for people of color in Needham or some, I don't know more, I don't know the right word, but instead of taking all these words that are kind of saying what they're kind of around the edges, maybe you just say, for X, Y, and Z. I don't try to wordsmith it, but I'm just saying maybe we make it more succinct.
Okay. So this is what I'm calling an alternative format. We talked last time about what it might look like to have a very short statement in the beginning and then some bullets. And this is, again, not quite in vision statement format, but I really wanted you to take a look at what a longer upfront statement might look like, as opposed to 2 or 3 sentences that then link or have bullets. And so looking at the elements listed here, there are some very specific examples. I don't know if that's something that we'd want. Reactions to this format?
I'm just reading the bullets.
Okay. You're not a speed reader? Come on.
This is kind of like what we talked about earlier about having that sentence that kind of captures people and then the bullet points and the framework that supports that sentence. Right? So this is kind of what we hit on. There's some really great concepts in these bullet points.
And I think we could certainly rework the first sentence so that it's stronger, given the other statements. Yep.
So on that first statement, I understand and I like the term anti-racist in the sense of the meaning that it has. But when you talk about democratically towards a just, equitable, those are the characteristics of anti-racism, at least as I understand it. And I feel that putting anti-racist there, in addition to that, and maybe some other qualities, is a duplication. And also, again, it might it might be misunderstood or misheard by some people. So putting the more positive statements of equitable, just, those explain what it means to be anti-racist.
And so, and this is not just for Rami, it's a broader question. Is it an aspiration to be an anti-racist town?
I would say the problem is not everybody understands what anti-racist really means. And it has different meanings maybe for different people. It's a new term and it has a very specific purpose, which are all very well. And I think it's a good sort of thing to introduce that term. But using it in a general mission or vision statement that is going to hopefully enlist a very large and diverse population, it might not be the right term there.
I think that's part of the educational part. You know, what we're striving to be or what we want to be, I think makes sense. That's kind of what we're, you know, like aspiring to be that. And that's going to come from education and other things. And I think, Lisa, is that what you're trying to say? Like what we're trying to be or what we're aspiring? Or I understand what you're saying too, Rami. I'm just trying to.
So let's enlist those qualities that we want that is enshrined in the term anti-racist.
Mm-hmm.
Let's spell them out. Let's say what they are.
Flesh those out and have it be in that. Okay, I understand what you're saying. That yes.
Because anti-racist is a shortcut, if you will, or a statement about certain qualities that you present. As I understand it, that, you know, it's not enough to just say, "Oh, I'm not racist." You want to say there's some positive qualities of things that you're actually doing.
Yeah.
And so what are those qualities? Yeah, let's spell those out rather than just dropping the word anti-racist. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I completely agree with Rami. I think I like that idea. And I think the concepts and the bullet points are terrific. I think those are great concepts that you spelled out. So.
Okay. And so I also think, and I know we're not talking about the rollout now, that you will need a list of terms that will be in a link somewhere so that folks can start self-education. So that should be a part of it somehow. Other comments on this format and or the content?
Lisa, it's Sue. So I'm going to go against the grain here and say I actually like anti-racist in the top line. I think that while not everybody understands the term, and I don't pretend to really be any kind of even remote expert on what that means, but I do think that that is the intent of why we're here. So that speaks to me. And I actually thought when I first saw this that I wasn't going to like it because I thought I was going more for a more concise statement, but I actually really do like this format. And while I would want to see some working the wording of this, I like the concepts and the general bullets, and you know, so I would like to work with that.
Okay. Other thoughts? Is silence saying anything?
I'm not sure where this fits in, or if it would be a different bullet, or maybe it doesn't belong in a vision statement. But part of what I see our goals are being is to identify where racism is happening, and then bringing together more people into the decision-making rooms that exist. And I don't know exactly how to word that at the moment, but I think kind of going back to what the discussion about who's doing the welcoming, that this still reads to me like a white community affirming people of color. And I think that is slightly different than creating a community that that is more equitable, I guess.
Okay. All right, we have one last example, and this is a paragraph, obviously. And this is a different format. So now this is the third format that you've seen. You've seen short 1 or 2 sentences, you've seen a topical sentence with bullets, and then this is a paragraph, which, you know, no one's gonna memorize, but I still think it's meaningful. So I just wanted to offer it up as an option. And maybe it's elements in this that we then apply to one of the other formats.
It's good. It's very powerful. I think it's good. It's just long, and it's, you know, maybe the format, like you said, Lisa, might have to change a little bit so that people don't stop reading in the first, second sentence that people tend to do, you know, but very powerful. It's good. A lot of good things in there.
Lisa, I like this one a lot as well. The one challenge I had with the previous one is that in one of the bullets, we kind of put out future aspirations, and then we didn't do it on the other ones. So, you know, what I see here is that you almost state where you want to be, and then you give specific examples of it. And it wasn't consistent in the last one, which is probably why this one is speaking out more to me. But it also gives you more of a positive spin in terms of things that you should be looking at.
So kudos to the person on Zoom who wrote this. I only modified it.
I like this one also. I just think the formatting, I agree with what Matt said. I think it's hard to, you know, you might stop at the second sentence just because it's so long, but maybe it's just the formatting and maybe it becomes bullet points. But I feel like it's really strong. And it's not divisive and it feels inclusive. There's something kind of nice about it.
It's almost like you put a colon, Needham will be a town where, and then colon. You know, the color of your skin does not dictate. You know, the students, young and old, have opportunities to learn a more full of it, whatever, you know, like maybe, you know, like that type of format. Because the theme in here is Needham will be a town where.
That would make it stand out a little bit more and easier to digest than just looking at a paragraph. I agree with that. There are some very powerful things in here that.
Yes.
I'm almost wondering, I like a lot of this, and I'm hooking it up with like Toyin's very short sentence from the beginning of our session today with, you know, the 6 words, wondering if there's a short and a long that could be paired here, where this is the more explanation. But at any rate, just thinking about that.
Any other comments? Okay, we are out of time. What I'd like to do though, is just to give you a forecast of what needs to be worked out once we land on this foundational piece. And so it has to do with the formats as well. So there are areas of focus that were talked about, well, that were derived from the data. And we had talked last time about how to include that as a part of the vision statement as bullets or as links to something else. And so I'm just bringing us back to that conversation, and also wanted to just share really quickly some of what you wrote about these particular areas. And we didn't decide, and we can't decide tonight if we want to look at all 7 or if we just want to take the top 3, etc. So this is what it might look like if we were going to bullet the priorities and then put an aspirational statement next to each of these. And again, I didn't wordsmith it to make it vision-like. I left it as you sent it to me. Well, kind of. Marcus, I shortened yours a lot for this purpose, but that's not to say what you said wasn't valuable.
All good.
And then the next 4, we didn't get any for neighborhood interaction or diversity on town board, which is why that says TBD.
And Lisa, are these all in the documents that you sent, since I didn't get a chance to look at them ahead of time?
These are not, but they will be.
All right.
Mhm. Okay. And we're nowhere near here, but I just started sketching out some goals and objectives based on our conversation. That would then go under the aspirational statement. So under town hall would be diversity. And you want these aren't SMART goals either. It's just samples of things that we could add as an addendum, as an attachment, as a next step. And so the bottom, which relates to social justice paradigms, right? This idea of building awareness, education, and then skill building. You may want to include that as a part of the ongoing work that happens after the rollout. And then this is a sample, a borrowed sample of values and guiding principles. We're not there yet, but again, I started sketching it out. This is a different way of approaching. These two could be goals. And then lastly, these are racial equity tools that I just wanted to highlight that you may want to adopt, again, as the work moves forward. So we are out of time. What I think might make sense is for me to regroup with the Kates and Matt and Marion and determine what next steps might be for Nuari. In the meantime, I will work on these documents. We've already got a shared doc created, and so I will just expand that if something is, and I'll put the other items. Do you want them all in the same document or in different documents?
The same document would be very helpful.
Okay.
I agree. One doc would be great.
Okay. So I'll add to that document, so you'll have that for reference. I'll tweak it live, so you'll have the version histories, and you can at any time go into that document and put comments. So if it's something that you think about later on, because I'm sure you'll be reading these daily, or something may come to you later. So let's let that be the place where the commentary happens, and then I will respond accordingly. My reference about meeting with the small group to determine Nuari is whether or not I'll get any more airtime. So, so we'll see. That's not up to me. So I want to thank you for your continued input and participation. You have offered up very rich content, including today. So don't forget to send me your sentences, and I will integrate those as well, so that we can have those as an option in terms of what we're going to arrive at when we're all done.
So I do feel like those sentences are really important, and maybe going back and with the word bank that you set up and using that in conjunction with some of these other things that you showed us today. Because I feel the word bank had some really powerful words in it that weren't all in the statements that we had pulled together last week or 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. So we're clearly going to need to have you back to wrap this all together, but we're going to have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll be talking with everybody about how do we figure out how to do that, because there need to be more hours. But thank you very much, Lisa, for leading us through this tonight. Again, I feel
My
like
pleasure.
we pushed the boundaries again and thinking about it. And I appreciate everybody, putting themselves on the table. I know this is hard work, and but it's so important because we all want to move to a better place. And I appreciate the commitment to making that happen from everyone. So any last thoughts, or I would entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Again, you have a chance, if you have any last thoughts, to put them on the table. All right, then I'll call the roll. Matt,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Ramin,
Yes.
Vivian,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Natasha,
Yes.
Toyin,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
for
Lisa.
tonight.
Very productive. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Thank you,
everybody.
Lisa.
Much,
Thank you,
Lisa.
everyone.
Appreciate your time.